Alright, so let's create some foliage, and in Unreal, a material with a wind system which actually bends the foliage. So here I have imported this mannequin from Unreal just for scale reference. So let's start with a simple grass and create a single blade of grass. Alright, let's apply the scale. So Control A, scale, and let's export it as FBX file. Alright, so here I am in UE5. So let's import our grass blade, and during this we can select the nanite option. This is UE 5.2, and here I'm not going to create the material, so just select do not create material and import. Let's drag it to our scene. Now let's create a material, call it grass, and for now I'm just gonna put a single color. So press 3 and click, it will give you this constant. Let's put a dark green color. And plug it to our grass blade. Alright, let's edit the material again. So I want to add this world position offset and I want to bend it. So for that we have a node that is rotate about axis. Here it is. So before putting the values in this, I want to create two constants which will be global. So let's create a material parameter collection. So go to material, parameter collection, and let's call it wind basic. Here let's create a scalar parameter and give it a value of about 4 for now, and let's give it a name, w underscore intensity, and let's create a vector parameter and give it a name, w underscore direction, and the vector parameter for now I'm gonna put the green value to 1. Save it. Now let's go back to our material. Now let's plug the first value. So for that I need the wind direction. So let's drag our parameter in here and select the wind direction, and then add a normalize node, plug it to our normalized rotation. Alright, now for the rotation angle I'm going to use the sine node. So right click, add sine, and I'm also going to use a time node. So right click and add time, and now I'm going to use the object pivot point. So right click and object pivot point, and let's add a color, and I'm going to use the green value. Let's add a dot point, make the dot object from these two. So I'm going to use this mesh particle pivot location because I'm going to use it as a foliage. So plug it here and plug this to B. Now divide this by a value of 4, and let's add it with time. Now let's multiply this again with a value. Let's say for now 0.5 and plug it to sine. Now from the sine node, let's add a value of 2 and again divide it by a value of 4. Now let's multiply it with the wind intensity. So let's duplicate this parameter node and this time select the intensity. Let's divide it with a value just to control it. Let's take about 60 for now and multiply these two together. So M and click. So this is going to be our rotation angle. Now for the pivot point, again I'm going to use object pivot point and plug this mesh particle pivot location for using it with foliage. And for position, I'm going to use world position. Now for rotating it about the bottom, let's create a mask. So for that, I'm going to again use this absolute world position and also this object pivot point node. Now let's create a mask and we only want the blue channel. So duplicate it again, plug both of these. For the object, plug the mesh particle pivot location. Now let's subtract from this one to this one, and just to suppress this value a little bit, let's divide it with 100. You can change it. And now let's multiply it with our rotate about axis node. And finally plug it to world position offset. Apply. So here it is. Our grass blade is finally bending from its bottom. And now we can change the values from our material parameter directly from here. So we can increase the intensity or we can change the direction of the wind like this. Alright, now let's create our grass clump. So I'm just gonna edit it and let's create some duplicates of this blade. So Shift D. Let's add 2 more. And now I'm going to use vertex paint for each of these blades and I'm gonna give them different values so that I can edit the UE5 material and each individual blade will have its own bending value. So let's go to vertex paint and this black to white spectrum, we can give any value to any of these blades. So for the first one, let's keep it white. For the second one, I'm just going to decrease it a little bit and with 100% strength, I'm going to paint it. Then again, let's decrease it more, paint again, decrease it more, paint again. And similarly, do this for all of these blades. So I'm just giving some random vertex paint values to each blade. Now let's make them a clamp shape. Alright, so here I have created this grass clump, and if you go to vertex paint, you can see the individual grass blades have individual color from the black to white spectrum. Now before exporting it, we can do one more thing just to blend it even more with the landscape. We can customize the normals of these grass. So just go to edit and let me show the normals. So we just want to make all these normals to point upwards. For that, we can go to mesh, normals, point to target, and click anywhere. Then from this option menu, increase this Z value to very high. So now these are all pointing upwards. Now we can export it. Alright, so here is our grass clump mesh. Let's put it in our scene, and let's apply the material. So right now you can see that the whole clump is moving as single mesh. So let's fix this. So for that we are going to use the vertex color node. So right click, select vertex color, and here we are going to add this before the sign node. So let's add this multiply to this, and from vertex color node select the red output, and finally add this to our sign input. Apply. So now you can see each of the grass blade is bending on its own. Alright, now let's make this foliage. So let's make a simple model. Okay, so this is the final shape. It has a trunk and these smaller leaves. So for this, we are going to use two different materials, one for this trunk and one for these leaves. The trunk material will be same as our single grass leaf mesh. So it will bend the complete mesh. And for the leaves, we are going to add another layer of movement with the simple grass wind node. So let's create two materials. Material 1, add another one, material 2. So select the trunk with L and assign the first material, select the rest of the leaves and assign the second material. Now, I am not going to vertex paint this trunk because this will be used as a single object, but for the leaves, I am going to vertex paint in a different manner. So let's isolate these leaves. Shift H. Now let's go to vertex paint, and for these I want to restrict the movement at the bottom, so here and here it will be moving. So for that, just select the black color and paint the bottom of these faces. For the middle, we can also make it gray. And we'll leave the top white. Alt H to show the mesh. Now just apply all the transform and export it. Alright, now let's import our plant. And again, I'll build nanite, and I will not create the material because I'll create it here. Let's bring it to our scene. Now I'm going to duplicate our grass material. So let's duplicate it and name it plant. And first of all, I'll just remove this vertex color addition because we are using the single plant. So I'll delete these two nodes and directly multiply to our sign node. Let's apply this to our plant. So right now we have two material slots. So for this first one, I'm going to apply this. And you can see it moving just like our grass blade. Let's duplicate this again and call it leaves. Now apply the leaves to the second slot. So now the whole plant is moving. Now let's add a secondary movement to these leaves. Let me change the color to white just to see it better. Alright, so this is our whole node setup for the initial movement. Now let's add simple grass wind node. And I'll add this with this whole setup. So I already have the intensity in the global nodes. So just duplicate this. Select the intensity. And just to add another control over it, let's add a parameter. So S and click. Let's call it intensity overlay. Give it a value of 1 for now. And let's multiply it with our global intensity and plug it to wind intensity. Now let's create a wind weight. So again S and click to create a parameter. Call it W weight. Let's give it a value of 0.2. Plug it to weight. And another parameter for wind speed. Let's give it a value of about 0.7. And plug it to wind speed. Alright, now let's add this additional WPO value. So I'm gonna take the wind intensity and wind direction node, normalize the wind direction, and just multiply the wind intensity with 1, and now multiply these two together. Now let's break out this 2 float. So add a breakout node, breakout float 2 component, and make it a float 3. Put the R to X, G to Y, and for Z, I'm going to use this wind intensity directly. Now let's put this result to additional WPO value. Now let's again add the vertex color node. So right click, vertex color, and multiply it with the red channel. So this will again take benefit of our vertex painting. And finally, let's add it with this bending movement. And plug it to our world position offset. Apply. So now you can see the leaves have an additional layer of movement. Alright, so these are all the plants and foliage that I created, and this is the basic leaf and flower texture that I painted in Krita, and I have laid out all the UVs. So for example, for this part I have laid out the UVs here. Now all of these plants share the same technique. They have two materials, one for the trunk and one for the leaves. And for each of these plants I have used the same technique of vertex painting. So if you see, the trunk has no vertex paint value, but for the leaves and flowers I have painted black in the center and white towards the outer edges. Similarly in these ones. And we can apply the same approach to this tree as well. So if I go to vertex paint, you can see the trunk has a different material and the leaves have black vertex paint in the center and white towards the edges. Alright, so here we have all the foliage in Unreal. So you can see the trees are working in the same way and all these plants as well. Now we can create instances of the material and control the values for individual foliage. So for example, here this is my trunk material and this is the leaf material. I've just renamed it to white, and in both of these, this wind intensity divide, I have converted this value to a parameter naming bend control in both. And then I have created these instances. So this is the instance of trunk and this is the instance of leaf. So here you can control this value. So for example, if I decrease it to 30 in both, you can see these are bending more and this have a different material. Alright, so here I have put together a little scene, and let's go to optimization view modes and shader complexity. So this bar shows how your shader complexity is. So green is good, red is bad, and this is extremely bad. So if you see, all of our foliage materials fall under green, some are dark green. So these materials are all in good zone of this. And also if you see the FPS, if you look at a bigger area where you can see all the foliage, still you are getting a good 60 FPS. Right now I am recording this, otherwise I will get even more FPS. Okay, so this is how I created all these foliages. And as always, this Blender file is available to download for free. I'll put the link in the description. I am also trying to upload this project on Unreal Engine Marketplace. Once it is done, I will also add that download link. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye bye.